What you're about to witness defies every law of physics and logic we know. When 7-year-old Emma was trapped in a burning inferno with no escape, she did the only thing she knew how. She prayed. What happened next left firefighters speechless and scientists without explanation. This is her story. Before we continue, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I really want to see how far the power of these stories is reaching. The acrid smell of smoke hadn't yet reached the second floor of the modest 2-story house on Maple Street when Emma Rodriguez first stirred from her afternoon nap. It was a sweltering July day in Phoenix, Arizona, and her grandmother Maria had insisted she rest while the air conditioning struggled against the 115-degree heat outside. Emma's parents were both at work. Her father, Carlos, at the construction site, and her mother, Isabella, at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. Maria had been downstairs preparing dinner, the familiar sounds of pots and pans creating a comforting rhythm that had lulled Emma to sleep. The fire started in the garage, sparked by faulty wiring in an old freezer that Carlos had been meaning to replace for months. The flames found eager fuel in the cardboard boxes stacked against the wall, filled with Christmas decorations and old photo albums. Within minutes, the fire had spread to the kitchen, consuming the wooden cabinets with frightening speed. Maria, who had been stirring a pot of soup, suddenly found herself surrounded by smoke so thick she could barely see her hand in front of her face. Her first thought was Emma. "Emma, Emma, wake up!" Maria screamed, trying to reach the stairs, but the flames had already begun to lick at the banister. The heat was unbearable, pushing her back like an invisible wall. She tried again, covering her face with her apron, but the smoke filled her lungs, making her cough violently. Through the roar of the fire, she could hear the smoke alarms blaring throughout the house. Neighbors had already called 911, but Maria knew that every second counted. She stumbled outside, her heart breaking as she looked up at Emma's bedroom window. Emma woke to the piercing sound of smoke alarms and in strange orange glow beneath her bedroom door. At first, she thought she was dreaming, but the smell of smoke quickly brought her to full consciousness. She jumped out of bed and ran to her door, reaching for the handle. She yanked her hand back immediately. The metal doorknob was scorching hot. Her grandmother had taught her this meant fire was on the other side. Don't open the door, she remembered. But how would she get out? The 7-year-old ran to her window, pressing her small hands against the glass. Down below, she could see her grandmother in the front yard, crying and pointing up at her window. Neighbors were gathering, their faces masks of horror and helplessness. Emma tried to open a window, but it was stuck, painted shut years ago and never fixed. She pulled with all her might, but her small arms couldn't budge it. The smoke was beginning to seep under her door now, creeping across the floor like ghostly fingers. Emma grabbed her favorite stuffed bear and retreated to the far corner of her room, as far from the door as possible. She could hear the fire now, a terrifying crackling and roaring that seemed to shake the very walls. The smoke was getting thicker, making her eyes water and her throat burn. She pulled her t-shirt up over her nose, trying to filter the air, but it didn't help much. Her breathing became labored, each breath a struggle against the toxic fumes filling her room. Through her tears, Emma's eyes fell upon the small statue of the Virgin Mary on her nightstand, a gift from her grandmother for her first communion just 2 months ago. Maria had told her that Mary was always watching over children, protecting them from harm. With trembling hands, Emma reached for the statue, clutching it to her chest. She had never prayed so hard in her life. "Please, Holy Mary, Mother of God," she whispered, the words her grandmother had taught her coming automatically to her lips. "I'm so scared. Please help me. Please don't let me die. I want to see my mommy and daddy again. I want to hug my grandma. Please, please open the door. Please show me the way out." Her small voice was barely audible over the roar of the flames, but she continued, repeating the Hail Mary over and over, the familiar words giving her a tiny bit of comfort in the midst of terror. Outside, the fire department had arrived, but the intensity of the blaze made it impossible to enter through the front door. Firefighter Captain James Mitchell was assessing the situation, his 20 years of experience telling him they were running out of time. The structural integrity of the house was compromised, and the second floor could collapse at any moment. They were setting up a ladder to reach Emma's window when something extraordinary happened. Emma was on her knees, still clutching the statue, when she heard it, a soft click that somehow cut through all the chaos. She looked up to see her bedroom door, which had been firmly shut, slowly swinging open. But instead of the wall of flame she expected to see, there was a clear path through the hallway. The fire was still raging on either side, consuming the walls and ceiling, but directly in front of her door, extending to the stairs, was a corridor completely free of flames. It was as if an invisible barrier was holding the fire back. Without questioning this impossible miracle, Emma stood up, still holding her statue and bare. She walked toward the door, feeling no heat from the doorknob that had burned her just minutes before. As she stepped into the hallway, she could feel the intense heat on either side of her, see the flames dancing just feet away. But the path remained clear. She moved quickly but calmly, as if guided by an unseen hand. The smoke was still thick, but she found she could breathe, as if the air in her narrow corridor was somehow cleaner. Captain Mitchell, preparing to break Emma's window with a special tool, stopped in shock as the front door of the house suddenly burst open. Through the smoke and flames, a small figure emerged. Emma, walking calmly out what should have been an impenetrable inferno. Her pajamas were covered in soot, her face streaked with tears and ash, but she was unharmed. She still clutched the statue of Mary in one hand, and her bear in the other. Maria collapsed to her knees, sobbing as Emma ran into her arms. The firefighters stood frozen for a moment, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Mitchell had seen many things in his 2 decades of service, but never anything like this. The path Emma had walked through collapsed into flames seconds after she exited, as if whatever force had held it back had completed its purpose. "How did you get out, sweetheart?" Mitchell asked gently, kneeling beside the girl as paramedics checked her for injuries. Emma looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Mary opened the door," she said simply. "I prayed to her, and she opened the door and showed me the way." Mitchell exchanged glances with his team. They had all seen it. The child walking through flames that should have killed her instantly. The local news picked up the story immediately. Reporters interviewed witnesses, firefighters, and experts, all trying to explain what had happened. The security camera from the house across the street had captured Emma's exit, showing her walking through what appeared to be a tunnel of clear space in the middle of the inferno. Fire investigators studied the footage and the scene, but could find no scientific explanation for why the flames had not touched that specific path at that specific moment. Dr. Robert Harrison, a fire science expert brought in to analyze the incident, stated in his report that what occurred was physically impossible according to our understanding of fire behavior. The temperature in that hallway would have been over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The toxic smoke alone should have rendered Emma unconscious within seconds. Yet she had walked through unharmed, with barely any smoke inhalation. The story spread beyond Phoenix, beyond Arizona, reaching millions around the world. People of all faiths, and even those with no faith at all, were moved by the account of a child's prayer answered in the most dramatic way possible. Churches reported increased attendance, and many shared their own stories of miraculous interventions. But for Emma and her family, the miracle was personal, intimate, and transforming. Isabella and Carlos arrived at the hospital where Emma was being observed. Though the doctors could find nothing wrong with her besides minor smoke inhalation that cleared up within hours. As Isabella held her daughter, she wept tears of gratitude that seemed to have no end. Carlos, typically stoic and reserved, couldn't stop touching Emma's face or hands, reassuring himself that she was real and safe. In the days that followed, as the family stayed with relatives while dealing with insurance and finding a new home, Emma's story continued to ripple outward. The statue of Mary, somehow completely unscathed despite being carried to the fire, became a focal point for many. Maria had it blessed by their priest, Father Antonio, who had baptized Emma as an infant. He spoke of faith the size of mustard seed moving mountains, and how God often works through the pure faith of children. 3 months later, at the site where their house had stood, Carlos and Isabella decided to build not just a new home, but a small shrine in the backyard. People from the neighborhood and beyond would often stop by to pray, especially parents with young children. Emma would sometimes stand at her bedroom window in their new house, looking out at the shrine, remembering that terrible day, but feeling no fear, only gratitude. The firefighters who witnessed Emma's escape were profoundly affected. Captain Mitchell, who had been considering early retirement, found renewed purpose in his work. He started speaking at schools about fire safety, but would always end with Emma's story, telling children that while they should follow all safety rules, they should never lose hope, even in the darkest moments. 2 of his team members returned to church after years of absence, unable to shake what they had seen. Dr. Harrison, the fire expert, published a paper acknowledging that there were events that science could not yet explain. While maintaining his scientific rigor, he admitted that Emma's survival challenged everything he knew about fire behavior and human survivability in extreme conditions. His honest assessment sparked debates in scientific communities about the limits of human knowledge and the possibility of supernatural intervention. Emma herself grew up with a quiet confidence and deep faith that influenced everyone around her. She didn't boast about her experience or seek attention, but when asked, she would simply say that Mary had saved her when she needed help most. Her classmates, initially skeptical, couldn't deny the security footage that had been viewed millions of times online. Many found comfort in her story during their own difficult times. Years later, when Emma was in high school, she received a letter from a mother in Brazil whose daughter had survived a similar situation after praying, inspired by Emma's story. Then came another from India, another from Kenya, and more from places she had never heard of. Each told of children and adults who, in moments of desperate danger, had remembered Emma's story and found their own miracles. Doors that shouldn't open but did, paths through danger that shouldn't exist but appeared, survivals that shouldn't have been possible but happened anyway. Maria lived to see Emma graduate from college, where she studied pediatric nursing like her mother. At the graduation ceremony, Emma wore a small pendant with an image of Mary, not the statue from the fire, which was kept in a special place at home, but a new one her grandmother had given her. In her valedictorian speech, Emma spoke about faith, not as an abstract concept, but as a living force that could open doors when all seemed lost. The investigation into the fire revealed the faulty wiring that had caused it, leading to new safety regulations and inspections that prevented countless similar tragedies. The manufacturing company that had produced the defective freezer implemented new safety measures. From one miraculous survival came changes that saved many other lives, a ripple effect of grace that continued to spread. Scientists and skeptics continue to analyze the footage and testimonies, proposing theories about air currents, structural anomalies, and psychological factors. But none could fully explain how a 7-year-old girl had walked through a burning house unharmed. The firefighters who were there that day knew what they had seen, and no amount of theorizing could change their minds. They had witnessed something beyond explanation, something that transcended the physical laws they dealt with every day. Emma kept in touch with Captain Mitchell throughout the years. When he finally retired, she was there at his retirement party, now a young woman pursuing her nursing degree. He introduced her to the crowd as the miracle that reminded us why we do this job. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as he recounted that July day, his voice still filled with awe years later. The shrine in the backyard of the Rodriguez family's new home became a place of pilgrimage for many seeking hope in desperate situations. Emma's parents never charged anyone or sought to profit from what had happened. Instead, they created a small foundation that helped families affected by house fires, providing temporary housing and support during their recovery. The foundation was named Mary's Door, and its logo was a simple open door with light streaming through. On the 10th anniversary of the fire, a documentary crew came to interview Emma, now 17. She had grown into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman who volunteered at the local hospital and taught Sunday school to young children. When asked if she ever doubted what had happened that day, she smiled and shook her head. "How can you doubt something you lived through?" she asked. "I know what I experienced." Mary opened that door and showed me the way out. Some call it a miracle. Some look for scientific explanations. But for me, it was simply an answer to a prayer when I needed it most. The documentary included interviews with all the firefighters present that day, the neighbors who witnessed Emma's escape, and various experts who had studied the case. But the most powerful moment came when they showed the security footage once again. That impossible image of a small girl walking calmly through a raging inferno, protected by something beyond human understanding. No matter how many times people watched it, the impact never diminished. It remained a testament to the power of faith and the possibility of miracles in a world that often seems to have forgotten both. If this story touched your heart, watch the next video on your screen about another incredible miracle that left doctors completely baffled. You won't believe what happened when faith met the impossible.